about app development and the work that he's done in that space. So I believe Dale and I have known each other since first or second grade. So if anybody can beat that, I'll take you to lunch. But I've known Dale for a really long time. Recently kind of just reconnected and have started following what he's doing, which is awesome, with his company Swattage. And he's got a YouTube channel that is very informative. And so I wanted Dale to come and kind of flex his brain on us about what he's doing with app development. So Dale, I'll let you give a much more professional and deeper background on yourself, but that's my opener for you.
Oh, no pressure at all or anything, you know. I've known this person forever. I trust him with my life and trust you all, you know. Anyway, Taylor said, hey, can you talk at Midday Connect? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And then he starts posting all these different topics on LinkedIn. And then he says, I have 10 minutes. I'm like, wow. What are the major market opportunities for new apps and technologies today? How are you validating your new app idea? What are you willing to invest in a new app idea? And how do you decide on that number? So I accept the challenge. We're going to do this in 10 minutes. There's a lot of material to cover in 10 minutes, but we'll just do a quick little overview of some ideas to kind of, my goal is to just perhaps, if you're on course to do some of these things right now, to kind of inform the course that you're on, and perhaps make a little course correction in case you're about to make some of the mistakes that I made in the course of my tech career. So thanks to Taylor for the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with you guys. Do you need an app? That's kind of an age-old question, right? Like, oh, how many of you probably have some idea or have had ideas for some app that you wanted to create in the past? You know, I see some hands going up in the, you know, in Zoom, and yeah, the chances are you probably have all had at least a few, if not many, different app ideas over the course of your life. And so it's an easy thing to say, like, hey, you can make an app out of that. And in fact, a lot of the people that come to my channel are looking for app ideas, because they want to look for some kind of opportunity in the market to create an app that'll make them money. The thing, though, is that app ideas are plentiful, but the actual ideas that get market traction are not as plentiful, because getting an app to interface with however many thousands or millions of users and understand the behaviors of those users is a really complex effort. And there's a lot of emergent properties. You don't really know how your users are going to interact with your app until you actually put it in front of them. You don't know if they're going to actually buy your app until you put it in front of them. So what I want to do is share with you some books, some recommended reading, some concepts and some ideas, and then I promised also Taylor that I would share also some market opportunities that are coming up over the next 5 years. So I do have some data to share with you as well, in case you're looking for specific markets to play in the technology space. I would use that app, so it must be a good idea. How many of you have probably thought that, like, oh yeah, I would totally use an app like that? We probably have all done it. I don't know if everybody, though, has spent money making an app that you would use, but that you don't really know if your market will use. I have. I'll tell you that story here. So Swattage is a company. We're a boutique software studio for the entrepreneur and also the mid-sized SaaS company. So we do projects, and we also do staff augmentation for mid-sized SaaS companies between 10 and between like 100 to 300 employees. And also we do some work with softwarepreneurs. So these are the bootstrapping heroes that are out there trying to create apps for themselves. So we do, again, projects and staff augmentation. We started in 2016 as a project management firm because I had a background in enterprise project management. And we built a project management app in 2018 called Circuit. And put it out there on beta, announced the beta, hey, who wants to participate in this beta test? A friend of mine saw that we were putting this app into beta. She said, hey, you built an app. I need an app. Come and talk to me about what you did. And so I went and I showed her, like, well, this is what I did. This is how much I spent. This is how I did it. And she said, great, can you build an app for me? And the next thing I know, my developers are building software for somebody else. And I have completely accidentally created a custom dev shop. Doesn't happen to everybody. I'm glad it happened to me because it really has unfolded and the market's pulled me in a direction that I'm really pleased with, but serendipitous, if anything. So we pivoted away from the whole project management consulting thing. I did get some gigs doing enterprise PM consulting, and that was great. It was fine, but the opportunities out there for custom dev are really awesome, and they're fun. They're fun things to work on. So I built this app, this project management thing called Circuit in 2018, and I started sending out some video demos of this to different users in my target market. And this one person responded with this really poignant feedback. He said, maybe be more customer focused and interview potential users about their typical pain points and limitations with their existing systems. Then create a product out of that. Like, he could see, it was so transparent that he could see that I had kind of created this app based upon a lot of assumptions, not necessarily on data or having validated the problem statements from the clients. He just told me point blank, like, hey, go out and get better feedback from your target market before you spend money on building an application. Painful feedback, but good feedback, and I'm grateful for that feedback. So if you are in this situation and you're either about to or you have recently created an app, I want to recommend 2 books, and it's likely that you probably have read or heard of at least one of these, if not both of them. But one of them is called The Mom Test, and it's by Rob Fitzpatrick. This is subtitled, How to Talk to Customers and Learn If Your Business is a Good Idea When Everyone is Lying to You. And the title, The Mom Test, comes from the premise that you get an app idea, you go to your mom and you say, hey mom, I have this awesome idea for an app, would you buy it? And she is not gonna hurt your feelings, so she just says, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, And but it's not really representative of what the market will bear. So every time you talk to someone, you should be asking at least one question which has the potential to destroy your currently imagined business. And Rob also gives several rules of thumb in the book, but one of them is you should be terrified of at least one of the questions you're asking in every conversation. The idea is that you're not going out there to validate your concept. You're going out there to invalidate it as much as possible until there's no more opportunity to invalidate the concept, the business model, the value proposition of your application. So for me, this book, the Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, is pure gold, and everyone in the Midday Connect should be should take the time. It's not a very long read. You could probably listen to it on Audible for like 4 hours or so. It's not like a terribly long book, but a very useful one. Another title, The Lean Startup, probably a lot of you have read. If you haven't, you really should. What I like about Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, is that he shares stories about how he would put mock-ups and MVPs in front of people and ask them to buy it then and there. And when they said no, they wouldn't buy it. Then he would ask them why, and he would get actionable feedback as to why people were or were not willing to buy the products that he was creating. And he says, what if we found ourselves building something that nobody wanted? In that case, what did it matter if we did it on time and on budget? So it's not just about the execution or the delivery of your software. It's also about the market fit. The market fit is really key if you want to spend money well and get a return on that investment. So those are the 2 titles that I recommend: The Lean Startup by Eric Ries and The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. One tool that I found helpful in validating app concepts is the Value Proposition Canvas by Strategizer. You probably are familiar with this group. They're I think it's out of Sweden. I could be wrong. I can't remember exactly, but basically they have their business model canvas and they have the value proposition canvas. And in the value proposition canvas, you outline who the customer is, what they're trying to accomplish, their customer jobs, the gains that they're trying to realize, the pains that they have with their current products and solutions that they're using. And then you can make your product, your value proposition, a mirror of the gains and pains of your customer, so that when you're ready to talk to the customer, you can have a value proposition that really speaks to them because it actually addresses their problems and their needs. So I recommend the value proposition canvas as one mental exercise to go through to identify the match between your customer's problems and the solutions that your app provides. So kind of back to Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, he kind of basically created smoke and mirrors to see if people would buy these products. And talks a lot about the MVP, like the whole MVP concept really kind of originated with Eric Ries's book, to my knowledge. Anyway, I get this email one day. It's this young man, Stan, from Poland, and he writes, "Hi, Dale. Loved your portfolio, so I thought I'd reach out. Can we book a sales calls for you with your dream clients and get a cut if it works out? I run a platform that connects agencies with commission-only top sales reps. And they did 850K generated in 2020. Does that sound interesting, Stan?" And I actually responded positively to this email because he wasn't salesy. You know, he just said like, "Hey, this is the problem that I'm solving. Do you have this problem? Can we talk? Is that of interest to you?" So I decided I would talk to him. Sure. So I get on the video call with him, and we chit chat, you know, and kind of get to know each other first. And then he walks me through this platform, and he wants a fee for like 6 months of service up front. And I told him like, "Well, here are my concerns. You're some dude that I don't know from Poland. I have no idea if I'm ever going to see this money again. You know, what I really want to do is kind of have some kind of a monthly plan in order to, if I don't get results, then I can just cancel. You know, that way you're still on tap to deliver stuff. I'm on tap to pay you every month, and we have kind of this mutual agreement rather than me just paying you money up front and then you disappearing or not providing value over the 6 months." Anyway, so in the course of this conversation, I realized like this guy is iterating on his pricing. Like he's not firm in his pricing. He's trying to discover. He is testing the market. And I don't remember what it was that tipped me off that he was doing that. Something about how, he made some comment about how, the pricing could change. And so I realized like, yeah, he's really still just formulating his business model, which is great. So I told him like, "Hey, you know, Stan, I want to do the monthly thing. You know, can you make that happen?" And he says, "Will you buy if I do the monthly thing?" And I said, "Yes, I will." And then he says, "Great. I don't actually have this portal yet." So he had been doing some kind of manual behind the scenes stuff, but in terms of actually signing up for the portal to get access, you know, he didn't actually have the portal yet. And I thought like, should I be offended at that? And I realized, no, I'm not offended in the slightest. You know, he's trying to test his market, test his message to see if what he's selling is compelling enough. It's really a great example to the rest of us. We're trying to see if what we're offering the world is compelling enough for them to buy. And if it is, once we know that it is compelling enough and they will buy, then great. Even if we don't have those products or services yet, you know, you can take a pre-order, or at least you have an idea of who is interested, or you know, do you have a message now that you can scale, and so that when you are ready to start selling, you know how to sell it. So I don't see anything like morally wrong with pre-selling something that isn't even quite ready yet. So, so then the question is, well, how much do I invest in my app development, and when do I actually make those investments? If you are trying to build an app, a lot of companies will say, like, you want a price, right? You want to know how much it's going to cost to build this app, and so you talk to somebody, you talk to some software vendor, and they say, well, it's going to cost, you know, 16K or 160K or 90K or whatever that price is. And it's based upon some really high-level conversations, maybe some high-level documentation that you provided. And the problem with that is that they don't really know how much it's going to cost to build that app. And the danger is that they're either going to lowball you and then keep changing the price because they've had more expenses, or that they're going to just highball you and it's going to be a really, really high price that you may not be able to afford, especially if you're bootstrapping. So what we do is we practice something called progressive elaboration, where we map out user stories first. So we actually kind of identify the specific kind of nodes, or like kind of the path of the user through the application. And that's its own statement of work. It's its own engagement, and the price for that is already known, and it's pretty cheap. You know, it's like a couple grand basically to have your user stories mapped out. So basically, you have all of the detailed business requirements of your application, and then you actually have a deliverable in your hands that you can take and you can use with any other software vendor. You can use it with us. You can use it with somebody else. But it's kind of like walking out of the architect's office with the actual floor plans of your home. It's a completed deliverable. It isn't the application itself, but it is something that's actionable and complete that you now own. Once we have that, then we can take that and we can engage in a second statement of work where we create the wireframes and mockups. And there's more detail that unfolds as to the cost of the actual development as the wireframes are created. But then we develop, test, and release. So basically, this progressive elaboration means that you're only really committing to do like one stage at a time. So by the time we get to the end of wireframes and mockups, by the time you finish the user stories, you know how much it's going to cost to design your wireframes and your mockups. by the time you finish the wireframes and mockups, you know how much it will cost to develop, test, and release your application. So it takes the mystery of like, oh, how much this is actually going to cost? Are you going to take advantage of me? It takes that risk and mitigates it fully. So also, once you actually have wireframes and mockups, so if you do your stories, right, and then you do your wireframes and mockups, now you actually have some of those visual assets that you can put in front of customers to say, hey, will you buy this? So in terms of validating your app concept, if you actually have the visual mockups, the drawings of how the app will work, and you can even set it up so that you can tap through it, you know, and or your users can click through it in an online or an in-person interview or a focus group, then you can ask them if they will buy it right then and there. It looks like you actually have a product. It's something they can respond to. Whereas if they're trying to respond to just your ideas, it's very, very abstract, and it can be less compelling. All right, so that's a little bit about, you know, how much should you pay? If I were you trying to create an app for whatever SaaS business model that you wanted to create, I would try to get just the path of the user experience mapped out first. I would do the designs first. I would not spend any money past that until I had taken those designs out to the users and I had gotten them to say why they would or would not buy, how much they would or would not pay to use that application first. And once I had enough of compelling feedback from those people, or enough pre-orders, or enough actual customers ready to buy, then I would spend money on developing and testing and releasing. Should you spend 200 grand on an application? I wouldn't. There are a lot of companies that will not take you on as a client unless you're willing to spend 250 grand at the minimum. Those are more enterprise customers, you know, and so I would try to find someone that could create the application that you need for. I personally would not want to spend less than 20 grand because you probably are not going to get a quality product. I would not want to spend more than 60 or 70 grand because then you're paying way too much for an application, or your application is too complex. So those are some things to consider if you're going to spend money. Sometimes I have people come and ask me, how much does it cost to build this app? And they're shocked that it will cost, you know, $2,000 to do the user stories, or they're shocked that it'll cost, you know, between 4 and 8 grand to create the wireframes and mockups. And if you're not ready to spend, you know, at least 20 grand on your application, then you probably are not ready to own or to jump into SaaS entrepreneurship, because it does require an upfront investment. Okay, now in case you are looking for some market opportunities, some specific markets that are growing quite significantly over the next 5 years, I'm going to give you 4. The source for these data is Markets and Markets. So they send out, you know, they sell basically industry market reports. You can buy them. They're kind of pricey. I'm on their mailing list, so they send me all these titles. Sometimes just the titles are enough. Like the spam that they send is already really, really helpful information. Like they send you just enough of information, like the summary of each market report to get you, you know, ideas of a direction to start. But there's a lot of markets that are growing. Here are 4 of them: security as a service, IoT middleware, intelligent process automation, and Wi-Fi as a service. We don't really have a lot of time to go through these in detail, but I have a video where I talk about these 4 plus 1 more on my channel. So what I will do is I'm going to drop the link to that video specifically into the chat. And you can go check out the video. You can kind of, you know, pause it and then watch it later. Make sure that you subscribe while you're there. That'd be great. I would appreciate it. Every subscriber helps. And all I have to do now is figure out where I can access the chat. There it is. Great. And I will close with this one thought. Life doesn't end with failure. It starts with it. It's okay to fail. You will fail if you're going to build apps for whatever market you're building them for. The trick is if you have 50,000 that you want to spend, try to fail at 5,000 and learn from it, so you still have 45,000 left to move on to the next thing, or to learn from your failures. Don't spend all 50,000 and then fail. Try to fail as soon as you can, and by spending a little bit of money up front on UX design, and then taking your time to interview your market, then you can fail more quickly and learn and change and adapt to what your market really wants. I hope that's been of help to everyone. Spencer says, fail forward. I absolutely agree. And I'll take questions, I guess, or Taylor, back to you. Whatever you want to do from here on out.
Yeah, questions and discussions would be great. I threw a couple of questions that I have in there pertaining to like the terrifying questions. I really like that. I would pose that to you and the group, Dale. Like, what examples or have you asked that have been terrifying questions for you or for the rest of the group? And then the other one is, as an app development professional or company, Dale, what are you most worried about potential clients asking you? Like, what are the things that if the group, anyone here in the group wanted to develop an app, what should they ask the app development company to make sure they're going to do what they say, or they're good, or whatever?
Yeah.
And then other questions, if the group has other questions, just unmute yourself and ask, or throw it in the chat, or whatever is easiest.
So your first question was what kind of terrifying questions? What are examples of terrifying questions that you and everyone else have asked or would suggest asking? In asking terrifying questions, the terrifying thing basically is saying you cannot just ask questions that just validate you. And so you have to get away from that, and you have to move in the direction of asking questions that focus on what the customer does currently. So if the customer, and it also depends on how far along you are in your process of conceptualizing, like ideation, conceptualizing, and validating those concepts. If you're just starting out and you're trying to get ideas, or you're trying to see if your idea is going to fly with a specific customer, you're going to want to ask questions like, so what do you do currently to solve that problem? When was the last time you dealt with this problem? How much do you currently spend to deal with that problem? And the problem with asking more hypothetical questions like, well, would you buy this, for example, is that a lot of times people will just say, oh, yes, I would, because they want to be polite to you. So terrifying questions are the questions that that deal with the reality of what the customer does and doesn't do currently, and their willingness to find alternative solutions to the problems that they face. What are some other good examples? So if I were to ask about the project management app that I mentioned earlier on, I sent out a bunch of questions to a whole bunch of program managers in the in this Wasatch Front, and I asked questions like, what is it that you do and don't like about this product, and how much would you be willing to pay for a product like this? That can be a terrifying question, because you'll find out that a lot of people's willingness to pay for your product is either too high, is like way too low. Like, you're hoping for a certain price point, and they don't value that monthly subscription the way that you feel like they should, and so you realize that something's off. Any question that's going to invalidate your current business model, it can be a terrifying question.
Okay, so like examples, Phil or Devin Miller, I know you guys are embarking on newish things. You guys have questions in your head that are terrifying for your businesses, or anybody else?
I do. I'll go. So I mean, we do the same thing with physical products. We're a manufacturer, and it's like, do we cut molds? Do we just, we're doing additive manufacturing now. But how long does it take you, Dell, to really prove if a product is going to make it or not? I mean, you say sell quick, so you only lose 5,000 versus 50, but what's the time frame on that? And generally speaking, I guess sometimes they're different for each product, but
if you're trying to disprove your current assumptions, you could disprove them as quickly as within a few weeks. Like, hey, that obviously didn't work. But if you're asking about the time frame it takes to disprove several iterations until you feel like you have the concept that's actually the winner, I would say don't rush yourself. You're probably going to spend at least 3, if not 6 months doing that. Like, you really need a lot of interviews, a lot of contact time. Now, it also is kind of a relative question relative to how much you're willing to potentially throw away. Like, if it's no big deal to you to throw out 10 grand to create a mock-up of a product, and you're fairly confident that you're doing the right thing, you could go for it as long as you know that you've got additional funds later to potentially redo all that work in case it fails. Just as a precautionary measure, it would be better to say, here are some examples of kind of the concept, the idea, put that in front of people. But you need time to first ask, without even pitching your idea to people, what do you do currently? Is this a problem for you, or is it not a problem for you? And if it's not a problem for them, then you need to move on to something else. Then you need to make adjustments to who the target market is. You need to make adjustments to what the value proposition is, and then ask the next round, and then the next round, the next round. I would say 3 to 6 months is probably a good time frame at least.
So what Dale said there, I think is, at least in my experience, is the key is when you're dealing with people that own businesses, there's something that's keeping them up at night, or there's a handful of things, maybe top 3 to 5, that's causing them a problem. If you can help them solve that problem, they will spend money with you, and with respect to the size of the problem. If it's off that top 5 list, you're going to have to give something away basically for free to get them to give you time. So you got to focus on, you got to find these problems that are common amongst the businesses that are painful ones. And Spencer, yours, with this additive, I would definitely start out with helping people tally up what the cost it is to make molds and service those things over time and all that stuff. So really understanding quantitatively the cost of their problem is my experience where the value is.
There's value not just in the execution of the idea, right? The molds, the manufacturing, the production, or the design, the coding, etc. Like, you can obviously deliver a fully functioning application, but there's a chunk of value that you may have skipped, and that is if people want to buy it. And so taking the time, like there is a stage where you have to get out there and you have to do those interviews, you have to do that research, and you're not going to want to just I don't know about Spencer, about how your business model works if you're actually doing some of the actual market validation with your clients, in addition to the actual execution of the products, the manufacturing. But the client needs to know. The client needs to come up with some kind of confidence that they know that, or that they've already validated this concept. When clients approach me and they say, hey, I want to build this app, I ask them, okay, well, what have you done to validate your concept first? Because I don't want to take them on and take their money and build an application for them without knowing that they know that it's going to be successful. Now, in a lot of cases, they come and they do have some kind of validation they can offer because they're already doing the behind the scenes smoke and mirrors thing. Like they're already offering these health and wellness services, and so the application is going to enhance that, or but it's not like they're testing out a completely new business model or a new value proposition because they've already been offering that value for however many months or years in their business. That's kind of a different case if they've already been validating the business model and they already have people paying. If they have currently paying customers for whatever value that application adds, but they just don't have the application yet, then there's a lot less risk in providing them with the services to build out that app. But I think as a responsible partner, I feel the obligation to make sure that people have a validated concept first. Let's see. Let me pull up some of the questions. I don't want to give away too much out of Rob Fitzpatrick's book because it's such a good book and such a good read, but there are some really good sample questions also.
Hey Dale, can I make a point on your the conversation you had with this Polish guy developing this thing or conceptualizing it? I probably would feel differently about that conversation.
Tell me why.
Didn't seem like you were bothered. I would be bothered. I'd be bothered with someone validating their make-believe business and going to the point of negotiating price and then saying, oh yeah, I don't have that yet. And you're like, yeah, we're all good. If that burned a half hour of my time and he didn't say, hey, I got this idea, would you give me a half hour of your time? I probably would. But if he tried to sell me something, we got to the point of the exchange and then he pulled out, that would bother me. Just for the group, like different people react different ways to that approach for market research.
Well, I'm probably also not giving like the whole background of the story of what was in the conversation. He did give me like a time frame for like when it would be ready and some other things like that. So he said, I don't have it now, but I will have it by this date, like our actual release. Like it was in process, and he had a specific date by when it would be ready. So like there's more detail.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't imply that, or, you know, for me, if someone was a little disingenuous about the progress in their product and then revealed that at the end, I would be taken aback by that.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that feedback. Taylor, what was your other question? What should people be asking their development partners if they wanted to pursue app development services?
Me?
No.
No, that was the question, is basically like, if you were to educate someone on going into an app developer like yourself, what questions should someone be asking that app development shop to make, what are the good questions that a potential client should be asking an app developer?
I would start with a question like, tell me about your about your app development process. And in the answer, you're going to look for responses like, well, first we do some kind of define and then design and then build. You don't want to have them just start saying, here's the solution. Anytime you have a developer that just says, oh yeah, here's the solution that we're going to use for you, they don't know that that is the right solution yet. They will not know that that's the right solution until you've gone through that initial stage of understanding what the business problems are to be solved. And so anytime you have a software vendor that is prescribing a technology solution before understanding the business problem, that is a huge red flag. I would not work with that vendor.
Cool. That's helpful. Thank you. So we're at 11:50. I think we're over our typical time. I would say if you have additional questions, reach out to Dale. Dale, if you want to drop your contact information into the chat or however you would like people to connect with you, that would be great. It looks like we didn't get to Hallie's question. So maybe Hallie, if you don't, you can reach out to Dale. He's very personable, very nice person.
Holly, I can hang out here too if you want to talk for a few minutes after we end. Let's see.
Taylor and I are going to be following up because I do have an idea. Let's find another time for you and me, Dale.
Great. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, Dale, thanks so much for this. We will, for your presentation and your insight, we'll have the video recording available for the members as well. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it. We've got a couple, for the next couple of weeks, we've got some I think interesting topics, a little bit different. One is what we should be thinking about if we ever want to sell our company. So Ryan Condi just bought a company and he's going to be talking about his due diligence process on that and helping us understand that. And then I think it's the Chris Smith from the Campfire Effect on how to tell your story more effectively is the week after that. So thanks everybody for participating. Really appreciate you. We'll see you next week.